Indonesia. Are you from Indonesia? Yeah. Yes. How much it is? Yes, no, I'm checking my Oh, yes, no, I'm not taking I know. I'm not taking the king's support.
Sì, non fai pure sì, chiaro, deve mettere la pensare
Yeah, we're next.
Won't be done for this one.
Plastic.
Let's.
Ra dumedisa ra leboga bagaetsho re santse re eme ka dinao re kopa gore kgosi motshwara kgole ga le teng a re bulele ka thapelo.
A re rapeleng mo leineng ya rara ya moya o boitshepo modimo a baretso mogolo re hano rara ka tlhago sena ta rona baetapele ke ba marena wa Iseraele a ene wena o ba sireletsa marena wa rona modimo a poloko ra go rapela rara na chairpersone thata morena le re ramaphosa rara gore ba bue le rona rara ba re tlile ka mogoko monate modimo wa Iseraele ke go pila rara le bitseng ya rara le bitse pa ya motsamputla amen.
Re ka dula fatshe. Ga ke tsaya nako e go dumedisa dikgosi tsa rona dikgosikgolo tsa rona re amogele bagolo ba rona. We have called this sitting in terms of the section 33 1B of the Traditional and Khoi-San Leadership Act of 2019, read with clause 14 of the rules and orders of the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San Leaders as adopted by the House. In this sitting, it is only the President who addresses the House and no one else. In this moment, we do have our media people, so I will give them 2 minutes to walk around and take pictures, but take pictures with the necessary decorum of the House. It's your turn to take pictures. Yeah, no, thank you. Honorable members, ministers, and guests, you are all welcome to this sitting. I welcome the first citizen of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. MC Ramaphosa, the Minister of Kokta Methembing Kadiming, Minister Lindiwe Zulu, and other cabinet ministers, our esteemed kings, Kumkani Sandile wa Makgakgabe a Vululwantle, Kumkani Matanzima wa Abathembu ba Sekgotla a Dalimvula, Morena Moholo Mopedi wa Bakwena ba Mopedi Dikgomo Morena, Deputy Chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San Leaders, Nkosilanga Mavuso a Zwelithumile, members of the National House, chairpersons of provincial houses, deputy ministers of Kokta, Prince Bans Ngamashe and Deputy Minister Tau, Deputy Minister Bokopani Zulu, Deputy Minister Kapa and other deputy ministers present, Speaker of the National Assembly, Me Mapisa Ngakula, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Mr. Masondo, Mr. Kasa, Chairperson of the Kokta Portfolio Committee, MMC Dada Morero of City of Johannesburg, Deputy Chairperson of Provincial Houses, President of Contralesa Kgosi Mokoena and your members, Chairperson of the National Khoi-San Council, Mr. Leflu and your members, President of Rolesa Ikosi Mabena and your members, former chairpersons of the National House who are here with us, Kgosi Shuping and Nkosikazi Nhlauli, Public Protector Advocate Koleka Kaleka, Chairperson of the CRL Rights Commission, Professor Musoma and Deputy Chairperson Dr. Pito. The following partners of the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San Leaders, Dr. Khanaga of Sanak Main Sector, Mr. Dube of Musiamis Rural Development, Mr. Karim and Mr. Ahmed of Alimdad Foundation, Mr. Nelson Mufu from United Nations, who is the resident coordinator, Dr. Mtembu, who is the chairperson of Indoni SA and members, Ms. S. Moyani from SF8's country representative, Mr. K. Krill from AfriForum, Ms. Z. Sibisi of Fairheads, Mr. Z. Rigan of John Deere, Mr. A. Nkeketo of Ikamva Institute, Ms. N. Noko of Ukhanyo Grains, all guests, government officials, ladies and gentlemen. I am now going to call the President of the Republic of South Africa, His Excellency Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, to render his opening address. You may come to the stage, President.
Thank you. Chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San Leaders, Kgosi Thabo Milton Siahlulo Rapulana. Deputy Chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San Leaders, Nkosi Mavuso Langa. Zwelithumile. Your Majesties, Kings and Queens of our people, Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Babu Amos Masondo, Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Deputy Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Me Lucas, Ministers and Deputy Ministers here present, our premiers who are present, chairpersons and deputy chairpersons of the provincial houses of traditional and Khoi-San leaders, the president and deputy presidents of Contralesa and Rolesa, the chairperson of the National Khoi-San Council, Mr. Cecil de Fleur, and leaders of political parties, heads of our Chapter 9 institutions here present, directors general and officials and guests, and ladies and gentlemen. This is once again a real honor for me to have this opportunity to address the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San leaders. This is a particular important year in which we celebrate 30 years of attaining our freedom and installing our democracy. As we gather here today, we keenly feel a great void left by the absence of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who passed away last year. Beyond being a font of knowledge with respect to the institution of traditional leadership, Umntwana wakwaPhindangene was always seated here on these very benches at the annual opening of this house. We always would look forward to his participation in the debate, and more importantly, to his unbelievable eloquence. He is indeed sorely missed, and his absence amongst us is felt. Let me take this opportunity to condemn in the strongest terms the rise in killings of traditional leaders across our country, and especially in KwaZulu-Natal. Our law enforcement agencies have been directed to be hard at work to ensure that those responsible for this heinous act are brought to book. On behalf of the government, I wish to pass our deepest condolences to all families for the loss of their loved ones, and to you all for the loss of your colleagues. May their soul and those of other traditional leaders who passed on since the last opening of the house continue to rest in peace. Honorable members, in my State of the Nation address, delivered earlier this month, I reflected on the journey we have traversed over the past 30 years since attaining our freedom. I took time to outline indisputable gains we have made as a nation, not only in giving effect to the values of our noble Constitution, but in improving the lives of millions of South Africans. Yes, we do certainly have much further to go. Yes, there is much more that still needs to be done to continue to change the lives of our people. But it is incumbent on us to consolidate the gains that we have made as we chart the course for a new, better future, where there is shared prosperity, where there is true freedom and meaningful equality. We strive to achieve a society where no one is left behind. As a nation, we can also be proud of the journey that we have traversed according to the institution of traditional leadership in terms of the stature that we have accorded this institution a stature that it deserves. Today, our kings and queens are recognized as kings and queens, as opposed to being called paramount chiefs, a term which colonial and apartheid rule introduced to make it clear that in their minds, the real kings were only those that came from Europe. Today, we have a National House of Traditional and Khoi-San leaders that does play an active role as well as a meaningful role in our national life. And this role continues to improve. We do, of course, wish that more of our Khoi-San leaders are brought into the fold and are formally recognized under the Traditional and Khoi-San Leadership Act. The Commission on Khoi-San Matters has been appointed to receive and assess applications for the recognition and make recommendations to the minister. This process is taking longer than it was initially envisaged, but it is my humble appeal that we allow the Commission the space to continue with its complex historical mission that they have been assigned. Complex historical mission it is, but it is a task that they must engage in and complete. Chairperson, as government, we remain committed to working with the institution of traditional leadership in pursuit of the progress and development that is our agenda. We did so extremely successfully during COVID-19 pandemic, during the recent floods, and in a number of other areas. We were able to demonstrate how working together can achieve great results. We are working together to combat gender-based violence, the scourge that is tearing our communities apart. I have just returned from the annual summit of heads of state and government at the African Union, where we participated in a high-level event on promoting positive masculinity across our continent. We need to be doing more in our communities to bring men into this effort so that we can focus on the prevention and awareness raising about gender-based violence and the respect for the women in our various nations on the continent. Personally, I've been engaging with young men through peer dialogues where they are able to speak openly about what masculinity and manhood means to them, and also commit themselves to playing their part to end gender-based violence. You will recall that during the State of the Nation address, I spoke praisingly about how the young boys at a school drafted a pledge that should be signed by men. We proceeded to draft what we believe is a national pledge, which the Deputy President and myself have signed, which we would like the men of South Africa to also sign. It is a simple and straightforward pledge inspired by the young boys of St. Benedict School, who I believe have come up with a novel concept to get the men of South Africa to commit themselves against gender-based violence, to clearly state individually and collectively that they will respect women and that they will not raise their hand against women, and they will not do anything that will tend to make women fearful in what they say and what they do. This, I believe, is quite a profound development inspired by young boys, which all of us as men of South Africa should now commit to. For if we do that, this that I depicted as a second pandemic during COVID is something that we will rid our country of. To ensure that we give the respect that is due to the women of our country, the mothers of our children, our own mothers, our aunts, and our grandmothers. This, I do believe, is an important development. I call on all male traditional leaders to be part of this effort and to start their own men's dialogues. And we have found that these men dialogues work. I was keenly told by the principal of one of our universities, who said, and just was during the time when gender-based violence was rife at the university, who said they convened a men's dialogue and got all the young men in the university together. And they started talking individually and collectively as men. And he reports that after a number of sessions, incidents of gender-based violence at that university subsided to a point where some of the female students went to him and said, "Principal, we now walk around the campus at night without any fear." Meaning that these dialogues had achieved a very important objective. It is for this reason that I call on us as traditional leaders, male traditional leaders, to also initiate these dialogues. The influence and stature that you as traditional leaders bring to bear can and does make a difference, given the role that cultural norms and practices often play in perpetuating violence against women and children and girls. This whole issue has now been taken up at a continental level. And I urge that we as South Africans should also take it up in tandem. Furthermore, this House's partnership with Parliament and the SANAC Men's Parliament is greatly appreciated and should continue to enjoy the support of our traditional leaders. This spirit of unity should continue as we work together to bring development to our communities. Climate change is a growing concern in our country and indeed on the continent as well. The recent flooding we experienced, together with other extreme weather events, are a stark reminder that we cannot be complacent about this grave threat to both lives and livelihoods. It is pleasing to note that the institution of traditional and Khoi-San leadership is once again playing its role to assist our communities. I specifically wish to commend the work that is being done by the structure of the spouses and female traditional leaders called Umgogodla KwaZulu during the floods that engulfed KwaZulu-Natal. The Ondlunkulu stood in partnership with the Al-Imdad, Old Mutual, Princess Gabo, and Kaiser Junior Foundations, and others to help those who were affected by floods. And I know that this type of initiatives were prevalent in many, many other parts of the country where our traditional leaders were playing a leading role and a key role in helping communities to deal with the ravages of climate change. We do sincerely appreciate this valuable work, some of which we may not have known about, but we thank you for the work which is very valuable that you have done. I've been advised that several other provinces have formalized the structures of spouses and women traditional leaders of Amakosi. We implore this House to continue working together with the provincial houses to ensure that such structures are established and capacitated. Drug abuse is another serious challenge in our communities. It is encouraging to note that this House is working with the Central Drug Authority to support its work. I urge you as this House to encourage provinces and local houses to establish relationships with community-based organizations that are involved in this type of work, and those that would be involved in this type of work, to fight the scourge of drugs together. And we have found that it is only when communities work together, and in this case, where our traditional leaders participate jointly with other organs amongst our people, that we will be able to make better traction. We have a shared responsibility to work together to address our country's unemployment crisis, particularly amongst young people. The Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, the National Youth Service, and the Youth Employment Service are just some of the initiatives we are implementing that are making a difference. Through these initiatives, we have been able to bring in close on to 800,000 young people into job opportunities, but more importantly, into situations where they get job preparedness, where they are able also to contribute to the development of our communities, particularly in certain areas or disciplines like education, agriculture, and community services, where we've been able to deploy them to good effect. I call on this House to play an active role in the ongoing process of recruiting young people into the National Rural Youth Service Corps that is being coordinated by the Department of Agriculture and Land Reform and Rural Development. And it is also an initiative in which the South African National Defence Force plays a critical role. The Invest Rural Blueprint that was handed over to me by the former chairperson of this house, our late Nkosi Mahlangu, is being fused into government programs. The training of young people by the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development is a practical example of this. Another is the work being done by the Department of Traditional Affairs in partnership with the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy to streamline and integrate social labor plans into industry operations. The Welisizwe Rural Bridges Program, coordinated by the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, is yet another example of positive and meaningful change being brought to rural areas. Just last month, I had the occasion to attend the launch of one of these bridges in KwaZulu-Natal. To witness the difference these bridges are making in the lives of rural communities, especially for young learners who need to cross rivers that have swelled during high rainfall periods to get to school is quite remarkable. But it is also saddening to see how young learners have to scale through rivers, almost drowning, when they have to go to school. This is a process that we are determined to bring to an end. We committed to build 96 bridges, and as I said during SONA, many of these bridges have been built or are being completed, and we are now also going to move on to build more bridges, for we need to litter our country with navigatable structures so that our people can be able to go across bridges, across rivers rather. I believe Minister Sihle Zikalala shared the details of this program with this house in Bloemfontein last year. We know that capacity building is essential if we are to enhance the role traditional leaders play in development. And I've been particularly pleased as I have gone around the country and have had occasion, as I often seek to do, when I come to your areas, to meet many of you in your own settings before I even go about doing any form of government work. I've taken it upon myself to pay my respects to you as our traditional leaders, so that in a way you should be able to pave the way for us to do government work, yes, in cooperation with you. But I've been highly impressed with the disposition that I have found amongst you. The disposition of seeking to focus on development issues, no longer just on issues which have to do with non-development matters, where you have demonstrated very clearly that in order for community development to be entrenched and to proceed, you have taken a keen interest as our traditional leaders to be part of the process of development, to be intricately involved, and to be interested in matters of development. And in this regard, we welcome the partnership between the Department of Traditional Affairs and the National School of Government to provide training, amongst others, facilitating socio-economic development for traditional communities. The National School of Government is offering a number of outstanding courses, and we are pleased that they are doing this not only in our own country, but also today in another country in Southern Africa, where, as Professor Ngaweni told me, they are outlining a full course for ministers and officials of another country in the attendance of the president of that country. So there is a great deal that our National School of Government is doing. In the new administration, the 7th administration, I will be making it compulsory for those that I will lead in the executive that is coming to attend the course at the National School of Government. I hope you get the underlying message. The program that the National School of Government has initiated is aimed at empowering, yes, our government representatives, including our traditional leaders, to act as change agents in their communities and to transfer new knowledge and skills so we can initiate sustainable economic interventions in our rural areas. It is for this reason that I applaud you as our traditional leaders for having a keen interest in matters that have to deal with development. This, yes, has been in development. It has been rising. It has been growing. And I want to stress that we would like it to grow more. Our goal in the end is an active rural citizenry with our traditional leaders at the helm. Gone should be the days when whatever is done for our people is done without their knowledge, without their participation. And I say, everything must be done with your active participation, with your active knowledge. That is how we build communities. That is how our democracy matures, because it becomes a participatory democracy. And I know it is hard, it is difficult. We have a robust democracy. That's what we wanted. It is noisy. It is sometimes rambunctious, and sometimes it is so active, but it is the system that we chose. So it must be engendered, it must be nurtured, and it must be encouraged. The people of South Africa would want nothing less. The issue of transferring communal land to traditional councils is one of great interest to this House. Even as I speak on this issue, I can see it in your eyes, that this is the one issue that you want me to speak about. Yes, I know that. As government, we are in the process of finalizing the bill on communal land, which will be followed by extensive consultations, as you must expect, because this is the way we have chosen to function. I know that this process is taking longer than expected, but our democracy, the democracy that you also wanted, requires that we give society a voice in matters that concern them. The challenges facing initiation should be decisively addressed. And this I address with a deep measure of sadness. We cannot continue to have customary initiation being turned into a harmful practice. We need to do all in our powers as government, as communities, as traditional leaders, the National Initiation Oversight Committee, and provincial structures to put an end to these unnecessary and entirely avoidable deaths and injuries of our young boys. I urge this House to continue to monitor and guide provinces and various local houses on the provisions of the Customary Initiation Act. We must live up to the slogan, Mabaye bephila, babuye bephila. That is what we need to focus on. It is always saddening, and I've said this in a few openings of this house, when we hear stories of how young boys go into initiation and come out as corpses. This is a practice that you as traditional leaders need to take hold of and make sure that our young boys go to initiation as they must, alive, and they come out alive. Because there is no greater harm that we do to our nation than to have had families bringing up young men, and as they are about to reach the peak of their lives, they then die, and die through something that we can avoid. We can avoid deaths at initiation. My heart was torn apart when last year we heard that I think up to 34 young men had died in the Eastern Cape. This, I'd like to challenge this House, all of you as traditional leaders, to put your heads together to come up with a clear plan of how, as the season of initiation starts, we can make sure that our antennas are on a high alert. And it's not like, the whole population of young men in any of our provinces is going for initiation. It is a number that is manageable. We can follow up every young man's household and make sure that they come out alive. Granted, some of the households are women-headed families, and that is where the mobilization of our traditional leaders can make sure that we do take care. I have some of my colleagues in cabinet who have sons who tell me that as their sons go for initiation, they make sure that they are there all the time, making sure that it all works well. They are there day and night, ensuring that the process is properly managed. And I do believe that if there is proper mobilization in our communities, where our traditional leaders work together with households, exactly the same thing can happen. Where as young men go for initiation, the men in the community make sure, even if there are women-headed families, they make sure that these young men are well looked after and they come back alive. This I ask of you as our traditional leaders, to take this in your hands. Another matter that has been outstanding for some time in our program is the Traditional Courts Act. And I know this is one other that you do want to talk to me about. I have now assented to the act and will soon be proclaiming the date on which it comes into effect. I expect a good round of applause on this issue. In the meantime, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the Department of Traditional Affairs have started with some of the preparatory work that will facilitate implementation. This includes visiting some of the traditional councils to further discuss their approaches to alternative dispute resolution and the resources they deploy in this regard. This is a matter on which we have finally made good progress. And I do hope that it is something that you do recognize. We have had concerns expressed to us by this House with regard to involving traditional leadership more in the work of the interministerial task team. The Deputy President and myself are seized with the matter of ensuring that members of this House are invited to work stream meetings and are able to participate more fully. It is a matter that is being addressed. On the 29th of May, how can I make a mistake on this? On the 29th of May, South Africans will be going to the polls to vote in our 7th democratic elections for national and provincial government. Now, as we prepare for this historic occasion, which many in our country have been yearning for, have been calling for, the day has now come, or the day is now coming, where South Africans will, of their own free choice and will, participate in the choice of their government. Now, as we prepare for this occasion, I once again urge traditional leaders to continue to urge all eligible voters to register and participate in these elections. As we have done before, we call on traditional leaders to actively promote free and fair campaigning. People, politicians will come to your areas, and as they come to your areas, we urge that you should promote free and fair campaigning and to ensure that all voters can exercise their democratic right freely themselves. May you remain with the spirit of our forebears who never retreated when challenges were facing them. Working side by side, we will be able, in my view, to move forward. There's a great deal that we have achieved over the past 30 years. Some may say the glass is empty, and they know that the glass is not empty. Some may say, well, the glass was never filled, and they know that is not true. As South Africans, who you have also been aiding and abetting, we have achieved a great deal, and we have seen how the improvements have happened in the lives of our people. And I urge you, as we end the life of this 6th administration, that let us continue walking this journey. Utatu Nelson Mandela, as we often quote him, because what he said was so true. And he said he has walked this journey of freedom. His walk to freedom has been long. And indeed, our walk to freedom has been long. But he then said, well, I have arrived at this high point, this wonderful hill. And as I look around, I see the vista, the beauty, and the splendor of our country. And indeed, wherever you come from, you have great beauty, great splendor. The areas that you come from, the areas that you rule in are truly beautiful, and they are the gems of our country. But he then says, I cannot wait too long looking at the beauty of this country. I must get on my journey again, for there are many hills that I still have to climb. It is so that having concluded 30 years of our freedom, there are still many, many hills that we've got to climb. There's still so much more that we have to do. And we have to perfect our democracy. We've got to give full meaning to what our freedom is all about and what the struggle was all about. I spent a considerable amount of time yesterday talking to American legislators from the Senate and from the House of Representatives who are visiting our country. They come to South Africa to come and look at the progress we have made. And they all said, we continue to be in awe at what you have achieved as South Africa over the years of your democracy. But they also add, we continue to be in great awe of your great leader, Nelson Mandela, who we deeply respect. And then they add, we would like to engender not a relationship between South Africa and the United States. We want to engender a friendship. We want to trade with you. We want to invest in your country. And we want to see the two countries mutually benefiting from initiatives such as AGOA and many other initiatives. That gave me a great deal of courage that indeed we are on the right path. Young as we are as a democracy and old as they are as a democracy, we are traversing the same path to develop, to deepen our democracy. So that gave me a great deal of encouragement, as my presence here always gives me a great deal, not only of joy, but encouragement, that I am amongst people who love their country so deeply and who are willing to sacrifice their time to come here to work together as one nation, one South Africa, to develop the communities in which you live. I thank you.
Ke tsena kwe ke go leboge Mr. President for your opening address. Ke go leboge mo boemong ba dikgosi tsotlhe tse di leng teng. We are indeed looking forward to the dialogue next month that will be led by the Deputy President and a full contingent of the ministers in the cabinet to give a detailed account in terms of the progress that has to do with the development of our rural people across the country. We held a Shivicho in Mangaung, and I think we only had Minister Zikalala there. So we are expecting something quite different. We really thank you for coming to opening the house. Members, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for availing yourself today. We would also like to thank the committee in the House of Tradition and Customs Committee led by Nkosi Mahlangu, who sponsored a motion that we should, during the opening of the house, we should all wear our traditional clothing. Indeed, the members are looking beautiful today, and we would like to encourage the houses, as the provincial houses, as we are going to open all our 7 houses in the coming 2-3 months. May we also try to emulate the national house in terms of making sure that we do not look like parliamentarians, but we look like royalty that we are. So thank you very much. Those who were not able to do it, I know you will do it next time. Members, we are coming to the end of our session. As we leave here, we are going to have a photo session. It will be as follows. It will be the President, Minister of COCTA, and members of the National House. And then it will be the President, Ministers, Speaker, the NCOP Chairperson, the Deputy Ministers, members of the National House, the President, members of the National House, Provincial Houses, NKC, Rolesa and Contralesa, and former chairpersons of the National House. And then it will be the group photo of everybody that is here. We would also like to thank all those who are in the gallery who have graced the occasion today. After the photo session, we are invited to the lunch in the old Assembly Chamber restaurant, where our Minister Menka Dimeng will be giving an address there. So that is the end for today. Re lebogile for your participation. This house is adjourned officially.